Hey, it's Paul Vance with GreatDad.com, and I'm here with my weekly series talking to dads and talking about dad issues. And today we're talking about men's health, which is something I don't think we cover enough. So welcome, Dr. Tracy Gapin, to Great Dad Talks.
Hey, Paul, thanks so much. Glad to be here with you today.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this because you really I was just so impressed with your website and the resources on your website and the holistic approach. Some of these things you see, tons of those ads that pop up all the time that just seem like real scams. Like they're, I don't know what they're selling in the end, but what impressed me with all your material, science-based, you go through all kinds of the latest technology, the latest tracking to really get to the heart of the matter, which is trying to improve men's health, which is at a crisis. So you say that we're at a crisis for men's health right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, first of all, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. Before we get into all the fun medical stuff and the science and the hormones, peptides, and men's health stuff, I want to emphasize that when I work with guys, we always focus on your big why. Mm-hmm. And I bring that up because my big why is being a dad. And that's what makes this conversation with you so near and dear to my heart. I had a shitty childhood. I grew up with a toxic, abusive mother. My father was not around. And I grew up not having that key father figure role that every child should have. And so fast forward many years later, when I decided to be a doctor, I decided to be a surgeon, but specifically a urologist. And it wasn't until I did some psychology analysis later to realize that it's all about helping men show up and be, present and engaged husbands, fathers, leaders. But for me, it's all about the dad component. And so I love the work that you're doing. And for me, it's all about how can I help men show up and be the best dad they can be. And I believe that your health is paramount and a key foundational aspect to that.
Yeah, I think, well, you covered two things. I grew up without a dad present too, and I know the absence of a father. If that father is absent because of a death in the family, that's the worst tragedy possible for a child. But also, if you don't have the energy to get down on the floor and play with your kids and interact with them and be in a good spirit when you come home, you're not much of a dad either. Yeah. So I really appreciate that comment. So that was really the genesis of looking more holistically at health. You started out as a urologist, and then you branched out at looking.
Yeah, exactly. I spent 25 years in urology, and I now call it insurance and big pharma controlled world of disease care medicine. And I mean that in the sense that we're failing miserably. Healthcare in the US is at an all-time low. Testosterone levels in men are plummeting. Obesity is rising. Cardiovascular disease is not getting any better. And for the first time in decades, lifespan is actually decreasing. We're dying younger. And so it's clear that what we're doing isn't working, especially here in the US. And our healthcare system is great for acute crisis. I have a heart attack. I have a stroke. I have a kidney stone. I have prostate cancer. Treat this diagnosis, right? And typically it's with a drug until you're back to baseline until the next time. And they send you out the door until you have another problem. We treat that acute crisis again as well. But what I have learned over the last 12 years of diving deep into this whole world of optimization, there's so much happening under the surface that's not getting any attention that it needs. And that's a big part of it. There's nothing preventive. There's nothing proactive. There's nothing personalized about our healthcare system. It's pretty much wait until there's a problem and then treat it with a drug, pharmaceutical, until the next problem comes up. And so I think we need to wake up and take a very different approach.
Yeah. What do you think there's a segmentation there involved with? Because I live in San Francisco and in California, especially the coastal California, everybody is super proactive. Everybody's worried about gluten and every possible, way to be healthier, live longer. But then, the overwhelming percentage of the population is not in that mindset. Is that what you'd say?
Yeah, and there's certainly some geographic variation. I think what's important for men in general is that we tend to have this "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" mentality. And yes, you may be focusing on limiting gluten or on moving more and being more health conscious, but most men don't ever take the next level and really dive under the hood to see what's going on until there's a problem. And it's typically, men will seek out medical attention when they have a real crisis, a heart attack, a kidney stone, a cancer, something like that, or when things start not working below the waist. And when things don't work in the bedroom, suddenly they're like, okay, let me go get this treated. And then typically they get a Viagra or Cialis prescription, and that's it. To me, that's a red flag that something is really wrong when you start having those type of issues. When you start having issues with energy, where you want to take a nap later in the day, when your brain is fuzzy, you have brain fog, you can't quite think as sharply, and mental acuity has declined from what it was years ago. When your sex drive, when your overall drive to do anything declines, when you can't perform at your best, when you're just tired all day, when you notice your mood is off, all those issues, you can go to your primary medical doctor and they'll not really have any answers for you because they don't fit any specific diagnosis code. But those are the issues that are really at heart here.
And what age are you talking about that there's an onset of that where it's not normal? Because you realize that I mean, my age, I'm a little bit older than you are, but some of that is normal. It's not having as much energy and taking a nap in the afternoon. I mean, some of that is.
I will counter actually that is not normal. It's just accepted.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, it is at a certain age, men just accept, oh, that's how it is. And I'll call BS. That's not how it should be. That's not how it has to be. You've just fallen victim to that our healthcare system that tells you you're fine. Your testosterone level is 400, which stinks. I'm making up a number here, but that's a kind of a typical number we see. And it'll tell you you fall in this normal quote unquote range. So you're fine, Paul. Don't worry about it. There's nothing wrong. When in fact there is. And so we tend to see that transition around 40 to 45 or so is when the wheels start falling off, hormones start declining. You start having inflammation, stress, and stress, I say, can be from psychological stress, worried about finances, worried about marital issues, worried about your kids.
Midlife crisis.
It could be stress from toxins in your environment. Also, it could be stress from gut issues, gut health issues. It could be stress from nutrient deficiencies or hormone insufficiency, all kinds of stresses to our system. That raises cortisol. Now what happens is you can't build muscle no matter how hard you work out in the gym. You can't burn fat. You can't sleep very well. And so you're always in this vicious, ugly cycle of storing fat, breaking down muscle, not sleeping, not thinking clearly. Hormones are declining, inflammation below the surface, blood sugar regulation starts to become an underlying problem. You don't even, not diabetic, but just below the surface, a problem. And you start to get momentum in the wrong direction. And that's what gets you to the point where you're talking about where you just accept, I'm going to be tired late in the day. That's not how it should be.
Right.
But we fall into thinking it's okay.
Okay. So you have, I know you talk in your TED Talk, which I'd recommend people taking a look at, and we'll give the URLs a little bit later, but you talk about knowing your numbers and realizing that one size doesn't fit all, and that choices matter. So maybe we can break this down into those three things. Knowing your numbers, we'll talk about a downloadable thing a little bit later with all the different data points you suggest. No, but how do you get those numbers if your doctor is just giving you that usual lab form and it has many other tests on it, but you say your doctor, I want to know more, or he or she can they even prescribe those tests if there's no physical condition that suggests them?
That you're pinpointing a very big problem in our system, in that most doctors that are in the traditional healthcare world, they don't even know what they don't know. And I learned this over the last 12, 15 years as I went back to school, basically, to learn it. I'll give you an example here, and we'll look at testosterone. So you go to your doctor and say, I want to get my testosterone level checked. I heard that it's important. I heard that it's of the 50 hormones that we care about, that's one that gets all the attention. So I want to check testosterone. So your doctor's going to check testosterone. And the lab slip is going to show this ridiculous range of 250 to 900, let's just say. Okay. Well, first of all, what is that range? That 250 to 900 is simply a bell curve of the population. The average of the population is the median, and the two standard deviations statistically above and below that gives you a bell curve. And that's how the LabCorp Quest comes up with that range. However, we know from several longitudinal studies here in the US and two in Europe, all three showed the same thing, that over the last 20 to 30 years, testosterone levels are about 30 to 50% lower than they were back then, and they decline every year. So that bell curve that we just described is actually getting lower and lower. And if you looked at a lab slip from 20 years ago, that range was almost 50% higher. And so that's the first problem, is they get lulled into the sense, well, no, if you're in that range, that means you're okay. You're quote normal. And it, excuse my language, is bullshit. You're not. If your T is 400, it's not normal. But what's more important, this is what your doctor's not checking, is the free testosterone. So free testosterone is the unbound form of testosterone floating in your bloodstream that's being measured. 99% of it, actually, literally 99% of your testosterone is bound to other proteins in the blood, like SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin, is the most common one. So most testosterone is bound to proteins such as SHBG, and that testosterone that's bound cannot get into the cell where it's trying to go. It cannot get into the muscle cell, etc. So it can't have any physiologic effect. It's worthless because it's bound. What you care about, what's actually physiologically active form of testosterone, is the free testosterone. That's about 1%, give or take. You want to be measuring free testosterone, and most doctors don't even know that, let alone check it. You're getting a total testosterone of 400, let's just say, and being told you're, quote, normal, when in fact you're free in that situation, maybe 4. It should be, and that would equate to a total maybe of 800, 1,000, 1,200. That the total may vary, whatever, however much proteins you have binding to that testosterone. So a great example of how your doctor's not going to know the right test to order, and they're misinterpreting the results you're getting as well. So I'm giving you a long-worded answer of find a doctor who's progressive and understands this stuff.
Yeah, well, I think testosterone is probably the one that men talk about the most,
That's right.
since they associate it with
Yeah.
sexual function, but it does relate to energy. If you end up getting injections or creams or whatever they do, does that solve the I mean, is your answer to that shortness of the free testosterone or the lower testosterone level that looks better because of the data set being not correct versus time ago? But is injections or whatever, is that the answer, or are there other treatments then that you suggest for low testosterone?
Okay. Yeah, so great question. So a man has low testosterone. Now we're talking about low free testosterone, low total testosterone, and he's suffering the consequences of that. And there are a lot of consequences that you feel and don't feel. It's actually low T is correlated with a much higher, about 30% increased risk of cardiovascular disease, higher risk of prostate cancer, higher risk of having higher lipid numbers, blood sugar dysregulation problems, etc. So what do you do with that guy? There are non-invasive or natural ways of boosting testosterone levels, and then there is artificial ways of boosting testosterone. The natural ways, things that you can do, number one, cortisol, that stress hormone I talked about earlier, it goes to the brain and it tells it to turn off production of testosterone. Turns off testosterone, turns off production of thyroid hormone, growth hormone, and other key hormones. It crushes the gut and has a bunch of other consequences. But for this particular conversation with testosterone, lowering cortisol, and that's coming from stress. And so balance, work-life balance, mitigating stress, things like meditation, things like mindfulness, things like breathing exercises, actually enjoying. So I ask a lot of guys, what do you like to do? And the answer I'll get is I like to work. Well, that can't be your hobby. That's your livelihood. But what do you do outside of work? Well, I just work. Well, that's like a race car running in the red. It's like you have that car in full speed, max ahead, and that's going to drive up your cortisol levels, which crush testosterone. So back to your answer, I'm trying to be short-winded, I'm sorry, is to better regulate cortisol, because that's what's affecting testosterone. So lowering stress would be the short way of saying that.
Yeah, okay.
A lot of ways of doing that. Improving fitness level, a lot of ways of doing that, specifically resistance strength training. Most guys over the age of 50 are not doing nearly enough resistance training, especially of the big muscles like the quads, the hams, the core, the back, the abs, even those big belly muscles are key. When you work those out, you will improve testosterone. Improving sleep. Sleep is probably the most, if I could say one thing that affects your health more than anything, I would actually say sleep is probably the most important aspect of your health, because it affects so many other systems. Improving sleep quality will help your testosterone levels. Nutrition, we know that eating healthy fats and making sure you're getting some key micronutrients, B vitamins, zinc and magnesium and selenium and boron. These are all key micronutrients that are important for testosterone production. And things like sunlight. Vitamin D is directly tied to testosterone levels. We know that sunlight, especially sunlight, this is a funny topic, sunlight to the scrotum has been shown in a few studies to improve testosterone production. So I've mentioned a bunch of ways that we can naturally, without using any pharmaceuticals or drugs or medicines or giving testosterone, boost testosterone. Let's say, however, that those have not worked. Let's say that those are important, but they haven't got your levels up correctly. Well, now there are medications that we can give to stimulate your body to make more testosterone. Or what you were asking about in the beginning is we can give testosterone therapy. Basically, your body's not producing enough testosterone and we can replace it. One of the most common culprits for low testosterone, the causes, is toxins in our environment. And most people aren't talking about this, but chemicals, toxins called endocrine disruptors are chemicals in our water supply, chemicals in our food, chemicals in our personal care products that are crushing hormones, especially testosterone in men. And so mitigating those, eliminating those exposures can help. Some of the damage may already be done though, but mitigating those exposures can help. Suffice it to say though, if the damage is already done, one way or the other, we got to get your testosterone levels up. And so that's when testosterone replacement therapy comes into play. Now, a lot of guys will ask, well, does that mean it's going to turn off my own production? Well, my answer is, well, you're already not making enough testosterone. What do you mean? If your free testosterone is 2 and it needs to be 20, and you've done the natural stuff and now it's 5, it still needs to be 20, you're not even close. That's where we talk about giving testosterone replacement. So does it suppress your own production? Well, yeah, but you already weren't making enough as it was in the first place. And that's really the key is we know the incredible benefits and importance of having optimized testosterone levels. And so one way or the other, we got to get it there.
But doctors will usually jump right to the testosterone replacement.
That's right.
Others.
That's right. There's a lot of other stuff involved there before you just jump to giving testosterone replacement therapy. Yeah.
Right. So how well do other therapies like or other fast solutions like vitamin D, for example? I did a workup and they said you got to you need to take a lot more vitamin D capsules. They didn't say go out and sunbathe in the nude as you were suggesting, but they just gave me more vitamin D supplements. Is that the same thing, or should I have said, oh no, I want vitamin D in a different way?
No, great question. So I'm here in Sarasota, Gapin Institute in Sarasota, and we see a lot of men from here in Florida, and almost all of them are deficient of vitamin D. They have low vitamin D levels, even with all the sun that we get. And so it's not feeling like a failure to take vitamin D supplementation. Most men actually need vitamin D supplementation, and you want your level to be at least 60, typically 60 to 80 is a target for vitamin D. We know from a lot of studies how important vitamin D is, irrespective of testosterone. We're talking about things like immune function. We're talking about things like cardiovascular health, gut health. We know a lot of key systems depend upon vitamin D. And so I absolutely support supplementation if levels are low to get them where they need to be. Now, can you supplement that with diet? Absolutely. You can try to do it with food, but typically it's not enough. Typically you need more. Yeah.
Well, I think those are the ones that probably come up at the top of the list. Are there any other ones that are like so important that we need to talk about them and make sure that you're addressing yourself?
Yeah. And there are literally 50 hormones that we look at in the body, but some of the other important ones that I think are worth just emphasizing today. Thyroid hormone is not just for women. It's really important for men as well. It relates to energy and mood and metabolism and sleep and gut health and immune function. Really important that you have optimal thyroid levels. Your traditional medical doctor is going to check TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. That's not the active form of thyroid. You want to be checking free T3. Free T3 is the active bioavailable form of thyroid, and you want that level to be around 4.0 or so. Don't accept just a TSH like your medical doctor is probably going to be checking on you. Another big one is nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a hormone and is actually one of the key hormones responsible for blood flow, for vasodilation, which means increasing the caliber of blood vessels to increase blood flow. And most men are deficient in nitric oxide levels. And as you get older, your body is less able to take nitric oxide from food and convert it into the form that your body needs. And so a lot of men, we can test this. There are test strips you can do in your saliva, actually, which have been validated to correlate with serum or blood nitric oxide levels. Nitric oxide is critically important for cardiovascular health. And what might get your attention more than that is sex. So think of the pills, Viagra and Cialis, they are increasing nitric oxide levels where it matters. And so increasing systemic nitric oxide will help with blood flow in your whole body, especially cardiovascular and sexual. So those are important. Growth hormone is another key one. And once we pass the age of 40, growth hormone levels decline by about 1 to 1.5% every year as well. And I will almost never suggest giving you growth hormones. So I want to be clear here. We're not trying to make bodybuilders here. We're trying to just optimize your health so you can, be your absolute best again and be the husband, the father, the leader that you're supposed to be. But growth hormone is really important for energy, metabolism, building muscle, burning fat, staying fit, being able to stay active, like you said, crawl on the ground and play with your kids. And so growth hormone is a really important hormone that I will often suggest PEP as a great way of boosting your growth hormone production without giving you growth hormone. exogenously as separate injections. A lot of natural ways of boosting growth hormone as well. They don't tend to work as well. Improving sleep, reducing stress, stuff like that can be helpful. Weightlifting, especially resistance training, again, can help growth hormone. But again, once you pass the age of 40, 45, 50, those levels definitely start to tank.
So when you say, I know right now it seems like it's very popular to talk about weightlifting and the importance of weightlifting. A lot of men give up on that after high school or college or whatever and try to stay fit in other ways, but they ignored that.
Yeah.
We hear now more and more that loss of muscle mass is just part of aging as well. Are you of that viewpoint, or do you think that muscle mass retention or muscle mass growth is possible later in life?
It is 100% possible later in life, absolutely, without question. You're absolutely right. Most men give up on it. They kind of quit. And it's a mindset shift, and it's a focus. It's a change in perspective, how important that really is. We know that one of my colleagues talks about muscle is the longevity, organ of longevity, she calls it, which I love the way she puts that. I love her point, and that is that lean muscle mass is directly tied to longevity, directly tied. And so maintaining or gaining lean muscle mass is critically important over the age of 50, and it can be done. You can build muscle. To build muscle, though, you need to be in what's called an anabolic state. That means a growth and development state. It's and the best way I can drive this point home is I like to use the analogy of cities. There's some cities that are booming, that are exploding. There's new housing being built. There's new roads coming in. There's all these new grocery stores and Costco and movie theaters, and they're exploding. Think of other towns where the main street is dead and all the shops are closing up and it's decaying, it's rotting, it's old, it's beaten down. That's the difference between anabolic and catabolic. And so when we're talking about over the age of 50, being able to build muscle and burn fat and maintain vitality and sexual health and not die, it's all about being in that anabolic growth state. To do that, your hormones need to be on correctly. You need to maintain blood sugar regulation. You need to help maintain vascular health. Gut health is tied to that as well. And fitness, of course, comes into play. And so it's tying together. Guys are always looking for the magic pill. Can I just take testosterone? I'm good. Well, no, it's nutrition. It's what you're eating, how much you're eating, when you're eating. It's what fitness activities are you doing and when, especially in relation to your nutrition. It's your sleep. I can't emphasize that enough. Your gut health, your microbiome controls everything. It's almost the headquarters for your entire human body. Blood sugar regulation, vascular health. It goes on. You see what I'm getting at. It's a complex human organism. The system cannot be simplified into one single piece. Yeah. And it's looking at it in a comprehensive manner. That's how you get results.
So I know you say one size doesn't fit all. And so the one part is that testing. And I assume in your programs, you do all that testing.
Yeah.
But men could go out there and get some of those test results, I mean, based on the handout.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like to say one size fails all, which is what you're getting at there. And that is that everyone's different. And so don't succumb to some marketers out there who are telling you, just take this supplement, you're going to be great, you're going to have more energy, blah, blah, blah. Well, how do you know it's right for you? And that comes down to testing, diagnostic testing. So I'm always a huge proponent of advanced blood testing, gut testing, cortisol we talked about earlier, you could test for that. I love to use genetics. When we get a genetic blueprint, simple cheek swab, we can get hundreds of thousands of genes that are related to what kind of foods are right for you, what kind of foods are wrong for you. A lot of guys are huge proponents of keto diet or carnivore diet or certain diets that based on your genetics may be completely wrong for you. They might be right for someone, but not for you. And so that's what I mean by one size fails all, that everyone responds to things differently, and doing the genetics, doing the blood testing, using wearable technology. And we use this phrase N of one medicine, N equals one medicine. What that means is that we're all a little science experiment. We're all little petri dishes, and what works for one person is often wrong for the next.
So you mentioned two things there that I want to see if I can pin you down on. I assume you have a proprietary methodology if you do some sort of genetics testing. Are there off the shelf or online other tests that you can get, 23andMe or whatever, that would do something similar to what you're talking about in terms of your own personal genetic makeup?
Yeah, so 23andMe, first of all, is not what you want for this. 23andMe can be interesting entertaining information as it relates to ancestry and other stuff like that. But when it comes to actually health decisions like we're talking about, 23andMe is worthless. There are a lot of companies, and we work with True Diagnostic, great company that makes True Age as a great test for measuring biologic age as well. And we use a great genetic panel from them. The key is, what do you do with that information, which I think is so important. It's one thing to have information, is how do you apply it to me? What do I do with this information now? And so I recognized 10, 12 years ago, as I started making this transition away from urology to health optimization, it's the coaching, it's the lifestyle work that's probably more important than my medical team, the work that they do. And so I have functional medicine trained health coaches who work with me as part of my team with my clients, because what you're doing at home all the time that you're not on a visit with us is what really matters. And so it's, what are you putting in your mouth? How are you eating? How are you sleeping? What are your activities before you go to sleep? What kind of fitness activities? And are you using trackers to understand if what you're doing is working or not?
So in terms of tracker, I think I see you've got an Oura ring on.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that the one that you usually recommend to people? I know, between that, Fitbit, and your phone, and everything else that you could use as a tracker.
So I'm fairly agnostic when it comes to devices. We have clients that use Whoop and Garmin and Fitbit and BioStrap and Aura, and there's a new device coming out every week. The key is your information that you're receiving, is it accurate? And that's why I love Aura specifically for sleep. It's been one of the most validated for sleep. That being said, take it all with a grain of salt, and know that the information you get from any device is not going to be 100% accurate, but you can use it to track trends, track patterns. So give you an example. When we look at sleep metrics, we're looking most importantly at the different stages, such as deep sleep and REM sleep. These are the two stages of sleep related to recovery and repair. I find that when I go out with my wife and have a glass of wine for dinner, I can see my deep sleep numbers plummet directly. And so I know for me how alcohol affects my system. That does not mean that I tell my clients you can't ever have a drink. No, it means that see the data and understand what it's doing to you, and is that going to help you achieve the goals that you're trying to reach. And when you see that, those 3 drinks a night you're having are having that much of an effect on you, maybe we can find some strategies and some ways to alter behavior.
Well, I think that's a really good point. The third point was the choices matter, but I think a lot of men probably listening to this say, like, well, I tried dry January, no effect. Sometimes I have a steak and sometimes I sleep well. Sometimes I have a steak and I don't sleep well. Sometimes whatever the activities, they don't see any cause and effect relationship in giving up the things they love.
Right.
With a positive effect. So I'm assuming that working with you as a coach, or your company as a coaching, part of that is making it more motivating to, not have that drink or go and do the workout or whatever, because there's an effect that you can actually see. So you want to do it again rather than say,
right,
it's not worth the pain and suffering.
Yeah. A great example to drive that point home that you just said is we use glucose monitor, blood sugar trackers called the CGM, continuous glucose monitor, with our clients. And they're great to help you see how your lifestyle behaviors, nutrition, etc., affect blood sugar, which directly affects your ability to burn fat, build muscle, improve cognitive function, etc. And so when you use the CGM, you're going to see directly how that cupcake, that macaroni and cheese, that glass of wine, that baked potato, that cup of white rice, whatever it may be, that poor night's sleep, how these things are affecting blood sugar. And that helps you fine tune and tweak, again, back to the N of one medicine concept, that we're a petri dish and you're constantly refining and improving and testing and getting better. And that's what it's really all about. It's that, how can we be better, and use that data as a tool to measure if what we're doing is working or not.
Right. You don't appear to me be the kind of person who is advocating giving up all kinds of things in your life so you can eke out another couple years of existence.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Sounds like it's a balance.
You're exactly right. There's this big push right now toward longevity. That's been such a buzzword now, and I'm not going to bash any of the guys out there putting out a bunch of content about longevity. My position is there needs to be some balance between enjoying quality of life now, today, while also doing everything you can to live as long as you can in a healthy state called health span. It's not just enough to be, like you said, focused on living to be 95, 100 if you can't freaking live your life today. And so there is that balance of, enjoy the foods you're eating, enjoy the activities you're doing, like fitness, for example. What do you enjoy doing? Like for me, I love tennis. It's a great exercise. Now I still got to do some resistance on top of that, but I'm not going to go running or walking when I hate it. I'm going to go play tennis because I freaking love tennis. And now I'm not torturing myself. I'm making it enjoyable. And so it's being intentional about these little decisions so that it's not meant to be torture.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I think a lot of people say like, oh,
Yeah,
I've got to jog or I got to run and I hate it.
sure.
I bike 7 miles. I live in San Francisco. I bike to the Golden Gate Bridge and back.
Nice.
It's the most beautiful ride in the
I've,
world, and
I've done
totally
that right.
motivating. And the
Yes.
side benefit is that, well, a happiness benefit of just enjoying all that outdoor, greatness, because it's almost always the same temperature here. But it's also, I'm getting some of that cardiovascular in at the same time, which is, I think, trying to figure out
Yeah.
what that is, what those things are in your life that you can do to keep on moving is key. Well, this is really, really interesting. I don't know if are there any other important tips that we'd be remiss at not discussing as we conclude?
Yeah, so I think one topic that's worth just briefly touching on is peptides, because there's so much information out there now. There's so much hype and buzz around peptides that I think it's important just to briefly touch on this. And for the listener, a peptide is simply a short protein. Anything shorter than 100 amino acids in length and specific sequence, is a peptide. Anything longer than 100 amino acids is technically called a protein. That's the only difference here. Okay. But peptides are specific sequenced short proteins that have a very specific, precise function, and they originate from our own bodies. So, for example, BPC is one of the ones you hear about. It originates from the stomach. It's a 15 amino acid sequence that is isolated from gastric juices from the stomach. That is amazingly powerful way to reduce inflammation, especially in the gut, or if given as an injection, it can reduce systemic inflammation or inflammation in joints. There are peptides that, coming from the body again, are related to immune function. Thymosin alpha is incredible for boosting immune function. It probably saved me when I had COVID back in early 2021 when things were first happening. Thymosin beta for musculoskeletal repair, and C-Link and C-Max for cognitive function and memory and focus. And there are peptides for gut health, for repair, for sex, for skin, for cognitive function, for anxiety. You name it, there are peptides. They sound amazing, right? The point I want to drive home is that peptides are the icing on your cake. If you don't bake the cake, you don't get the frosting. Okay. What I mean by that, I say that as a joke, is the foundation, the cake is hormones, blood sugar regulation, nutrition, fitness, sleep, controlling stress, gut health, all these other key foundational elements of health. Peptides are a great way to augment your approach to that and to help get better results. But they're not going to magically replace, they say you cannot run a bad diet. Peptides won't fix things until you address them on a more fundamental level first, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. This is I really appreciate the fact that you did not try to simplify a lot of this down to just really the basic points, and that we went a little bit deeper, because I think the audience appreciates that there's a lot of science behind this. Is not just your opinion or what will.
Yeah. It is not simple.
Right.
As much as I want to make it simple and easy for guys, what's simple and easy is the fact that recognize that there's so much that you're missing that you're not even aware of, that your primary doctor doesn't even know to ask or to look for and test. And that's where we're getting precision medicine is all about being very proactive and not wait for a problem to set in.
Yeah. Oh, I can attest that I worked in nutrition back 20 years ago with Unilever selling margarines, which at the time were supposed to be the big replacement for saturated fats. But the biggest aha, the one thing that is true from all that era and all the research we did, was that doctors in general just don't study a lot of things outside their specialty, and certainly not nutrition or the more holistic approach that you're advocating.
You got that right. Yeah.
So you can find, we'll put these URLs in the show notes. The one that you can give us the text number to text immediately, but it's the Gapin Institute handbook.com/15-strategies, but you can text
So if you want to learn more about what we do in precision medicine, you can go to GreatDad.com. And I have a gift. What you're talking about is our High Performance Health Handbook, and it's 15 strategies and tactics that you can start using today to have more energy, have better sex, and live longer, which is what most guys want, right? And so just text the word health, HEALTH, to the number 26786. Again, text health to 26786. You get a free copy of that. And then we'll also share information if you want to reach out to my team, how you can do that. I'm also, for your listeners, going to include a free copy of my best-selling book, Male 2.0. You'll get a digital copy of that as well, along with that handbook, if you text health to 26786.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I did download the 15 strategies, and I can tell you that it is not your usual leave behind PDF with 15 things, most of which you already know already, and ready for the
That's right. That's right.
The virtual trash can. It really is a lot of data in there, and then you also have this consultation with one of your team where you can help set somebody up on all the things that we talked about, going deeper than your usual doctor would. We talked for a minute before we started about how affordable this is and the range of
Sure.
options, because I think somebody listening is like, oh my God, and it's not covered by insurance. So this sounds like a lot of diagnostics, a lot of work.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, so we work with men at all different levels, ranging anywhere from $200 a month all the way up to $25K for a year-long program. It really just depends on what the issues are, what we need to accomplish, that sort of thing. And so we try to be all inclusive. We are based here in Sarasota, Florida. We work with men all over the country, though. So if you're in another state, we do have ways, solutions to overcome the geographic separation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, this has really been valuable. It's different than we usually cover, but so important, since there is this real crisis going on. I mean, I think there's always been a crisis with men. Since we tend to not treat ourselves, not get the medical help when
right.
And certainly we aren't proactive at it. Usually,
right.
That our wife is nagging us to do things better, and we just say no. I'm going to keep.
That's often the trigger. That's right. The wives know.
Okay. Well, Dr. Tracy Gapin, thanks again for spending some time with us.
You got it.
Look for those. I really recommend these links in the show notes. Take a look at what
perfect
he has for you. Okay. Until next time, Paul Bass at GreatDad.com. You can find my coaching services and some leave behinds as well at GreatDad.com/go. Okay. Take care.